I woke up to find my husband had suddenly reverted to his 17-year-old self. Refusing to believe he was married, he flushed red and gritted his teeth. I'd rather die than marry someone as vulgar as you. But before he could finish, a man who looked exactly like him walked in with a dark expression. I murmured softly, "Husband, hold me." Waking up in the morning, I always sensed some strange movements by my pillow. Having been exhausted too much last night, I wasn't fully awake yet and could only let out a dissatisfied whimper. With practiced ease, I wrapped my arms around the person beside me, clinging and nestling into his embrace. Darling, sleep a little longer. To my surprise, my usually gentle and considerate husband suddenly broke free from my grasp and pushed me away. Darling, I opened my eyes in confusion. Only then did I realize the man beside me wasn't Philip. No, he has Philip, a miniature version carved from the same mold. Sunlight spilled over his disheveled hair, softening his usually sharp and aloof demeanor. His youthful pale face still carried the faint flush of having just woken. His brows were slightly furrowed, an oppressive aura radiating from his entire being. Meeting my gaze, a shadow flickered through his cold eyes as he spoke in a hoarse voice. Who are you? Why are you dressed like that and in my bed? I didn't answer, rubbing my sleepy eyes. Am I still dreaming? The Philip before me looked at least 10 years younger. He appeared like a high school student who hadn't yet experienced the world. I tightened the blanket around my chest and leaned closer to examine him curiously. Honey, you seem to have shrunk. Hearing my term of endearment, his long lashes fluttered slightly as he pressed his lips together, avoiding my touch, as if afraid of catching a virus. Then, with a gaze that could only be described as icy, he looked at me and said, "Don't talk to me in that disgusting tone. I'm not your husband." "Something's wrong," he asked, acting very strange. Propping up my exhausted body, I slowly rose and instinctively stretched out my arms as I always did, wanting to act spoiled and get a hug. The oversized t-shirt slipped right off my shoulder, revealing a fair expanse of skin. Though he had witnessed countless similar scenes before, Philip reacted as if it were his first time, jerking backward like he'd been electrocuted. His back hit the wall with a soft thud. The tips of his ears instantly flushed red, yet his gaze remained fixed intently on me. His face remained icy, but his eyes clearly betrayed panic and shyness along with a trace of curiosity. Even he hadn't noticed, so utterly different from the composed man I remembered. Shameless, stay away from me. I'm a bit confused. I vaguely remember him personally dressing me last night when I was drowsy, saying something about wrapping me in a scent. Everything was fine back then, so why does he seem like a completely different person today? Before I could speak, he let out a mocking laugh, his eyes gradually turning cold. Did that old bastard send you? What, kicking me out of the house wasn't enough? You have to ruin my reputation too. He paused, seething hatred surging through his trembling fingertips, then spoke with venomous clarity. You people are truly disgusting. Philip would never speak to me like this. He would never look at me with such cold eyes. He did look exactly like Philip, but the cruelty and despair emanating from his very bones made me realize with absolute clarity this was definitely not the person I had spent 5 years desperately trying to save. All my drowsiness vanished in an instant. My mission in this world was to save the villain Philip. In the original story, he was the most vicious and gloomy villain. Having suffered abuse from his family since childhood, his personality became severely twisted. After reaching adulthood, he would turn to the dark side for various reasons, not only kidnapping and imprisoning the female lead, but also destroying the male lead's career and orchestrating a car accident to cripple him. And I was the wealthy fiancé forced into an engagement with him. The system sent me to teach him what love is, to prevent him from turning dark. But all I know is how to act spoiled, spend money, and be cute. Ever since arriving in this world, I've clung to him all day, calling him hubby and following him around nonstop. We've been betrothed since childhood, so calling him husband is only natural. Yet he always reacts strongly, covering my mouth as if he can't bear it. Don't call me husband. Whatever you want, just say it directly. I blinked my eyes and cleverly changed my tune. Brother Philip, the first one to buy a bag. He swiftly issued me a supplementary card, his attitude thoroughly impatient. Don't show your face around me again. I don't like materialistic women like you. I agreed obediently, then immediately turned around and made myself at home. Not only did I move into his house with my luggage, but I also went on a shopping spree with his credit card, dressing myself up like a little cake every day and barging into his black and white world. He was gloomy and brooding while I was lively and cheerful. Whenever he resisted me, I would cry. The system mocked mercilessly. The villain is cold by nature. He didn't even flinch when his own mother died. He is just an emotionless monster. Do you really think shedding a few crocodile tears can move him? Oh, then what was that time when he got drunk and pressed against me from behind for no reason? Or when he couldn't resist stealing several kisses while I was asleep? I remained silent, simply crying my heart out. Tears welled up in those big watery eyes, falling silently as she pouted and looked at him with a pitiful expression. 1 second, 2 seconds, he sighed helplessly, resignedly picking up a tissue to wipe her tears while coaxing in a low voice. Why are you crying again? Such a spoiled girl. Didn't you really like that new bag from Ginza the other day? Have Uncle James take you to buy it? And those snow-skin mooncakes you were clamoring for yesterday, I bought them and put them in the fridge. Have Aunt Mary thaw them for you later. Don't cry anymore, okay? If your eyes start hurting from crying, you'll blame me again. The system was dumbfounded, wasn't he? He's supposed to be a gloomy villain. How did you train him into becoming a father-like boyfriend? Who knows, maybe this just proves that spoiled women have the best luck in life. 2 years passed, and not only was I not kicked out of the Phillips family, but I also married Philip and became his reason to keep living in this world. The system announced that his corruption value had been reset to 0 and would no longer disrupt the normal lives of the male and female leads, then vanished without a trace. Now I had no choice but to call upon the system again. System, what is going on? It arrived belatedly, its response somewhat sluggish. I'm sorry, host, but there was an issue with the villain from the previous timeline causing him to turn dark prematurely. If left unchecked, the entire world would collapse, so I had no choice but to temporarily bring him to this timeline. What you're seeing now is Philip at 17 years old, and his corruption level has already reached 99. If possible, please save him. One more time, I beg you. 3. I transmigrated into this world 5 years ago. At that time, Philip had already become the dreaded tyrant known throughout the capital as Emperor Philip. The young Philip before me now showed the budding traits of a villain, yet was clearly much more naive. He didn't believe a word I said, even scoffing at me. Marriage between you and me. His gaze swept over me, his expression shifting from awkwardness to extreme discomfort. Still not daring to look at the crucial areas, he forced out a cold snort while maintaining his imposing demeanor. I'd rather die than marry such a frivolous woman like you. Before he could finish speaking, the door was suddenly smashed open with violent force. A man who looked exactly like him stepped through the door, and a gloomy atmosphere instantly swept in. It was the real Philip system. Oh no, I forgot your husband was still here. Overjoyed, yet startled, I spoke in my usual sweet soft voice, husband. The 17-year-old Philip's ears suddenly turned red, and he retorted impatiently in a low voice, his face flushed. I told you I'm not your husband. She was calling for me. Philip's face darkened as he scooped me up, his hoarse voice carrying an undeniable authority and barely concealed rage. Who called you? Don't flatter yourself. In the dim shadows, his gaze collided with young Philip's as if countless sparks were invisibly flying between them. I obediently wrapped my legs around his waist, pressing my face against his neck while hooking my arms around him, yet I could distinctly sense the scorching exchange of glances between them. The gunpowder tension hanging in the air made every breath feel taut with unease. Baby, go get dressed in the next room first. Philip gently patted my bottom, pressing a tender kiss to my forehead before his gaze shifted to young Philip, a fleeting trace of malice flashing in his eyes. Let us talk alone. For I don't know what Philip discussed with him. When they emerged, the teenager wore a disgruntled expression, but the unfamiliar scene before him left no choice but to believe he'd truly traveled 10 years into the future. After all, there isn't a second person in this world who looks exactly like him. And I, this so-called frivolous woman, am truly his wife. I looked at these two husbands, one big, one small, then quietly poked the larger one. Then she whispered, thinking she was being quiet, honey, yes, so small, still just a baby. But I underestimated how sensitive a teenage boy could be. The already gloomy boy exploded at the slightest provocation, his face terrifyingly dark, clearly displaying I'm extremely unhappy, and you must apologize to me. His bad mood lasted until noon. During the meal, he frowned and clicked his tongue in annoyance, slamming his chopsticks onto the table in frustration. Enough already, must you be like this even during a meal? How disgusting. Philip was carefully removing fish bones for me. Ever since that time when a tiny fishbone got stuck in my throat, he never let me eat fish by myself again. Seeing this, she gave him a cold, indifferent glance. If you don't like it, you can get lost. So he actually got lost. When he left, his face was darker than the bottom of a pot, slamming the door angrily behind him. As soon as he left, I sighed in relief. Darling, you were so temperamental at 17. Philip placed a meticulously deboned fish fillet into my bowl. Don't mistake him for me. I wanted to say more, but he silenced me with his own lips, and then it took him a long while to finally stop. His gaze darkened as he roughly rubbed my lips. Baby, don't you think you owe me an explanation? I wanted to cry, but had no tears. How was I supposed to explain this? It's all the system's fault. Philip knew about the system. I never intended to hide it from him, and confessed everything after we got married. Seeing my expression, he guessed what had happened and paused. Is it the system? I quickly nodded, clinging to him and chattering away with complaints. At the mention of the word redemption, his eyebrows twitched slightly. Let me handle this matter. Don't listen to what the system says. When others were mentioned, Philip always wore an indifferent expression. Including himself, I hesitated and said, but after all that, still you. No, baby. I can't let you take risks. Besides, I know very well that only pain can make someone strong. How else will he learn to take revenge if he doesn't go through this? He's not that fragile. I'll be going abroad on business soon for at least a month. During that time, you need to prioritize your own safety first. Can you do that? I nodded, and only then did Philip smile with satisfaction. He reached into my clothes, feeling the slight swell of my belly, then scooped me up and carried me toward the bedroom. I wrapped my arms around his neck, trying to salvage the situation. But honey, he really does look so pitiful. His eyes darkened as he lowered his head and bit down on my shoulder. I'm even more pitiful than him. If you don't believe me, touch me. I knew this guy was up to no good. Whether it's red or black, everything turns into dirty talk with him. Philip, didn't we just yesterday? I suddenly gripped his hair, my voice urgent. Don't bite. A light laugh escaped him as if he'd reverted to that wicked villain of old. He slowly raised his head, his lazy voice tinged with hoarseness, carrying a low trailing tone that made one's heart tingle. Why keep mentioning him? This is punishment for naughty babies. I was at a loss whether to laugh or cry. How could someone be jealous of themselves? 5. When I woke up, Philip had already left. The system urged me to hurry up with the mission. Hurry, hurry, while your husband's away, quickly win over this little husband. What nonsense about little husband and big husband. Hearing it say that I couldn't help feeling guilty, as if I were having an affair. Afraid others might notice something amiss. Before Philip left, he gave all the household staff an extended vacation. I've ordered a month's worth of delivery meals from Rayan Tower again, ensuring I won't starve to death. I called little Philip downstairs for dinner. After waiting for a long time, he was greeted with a table of exquisite takeout, and his face instantly stiffened. We're eating this. Yep, I replied, innocently shrugging my shoulders at him. I can't cook. After marrying Philip, the first never even stepped into the kitchen. The one time I tried following an online recipe to bake egg tarts, I merely made an attempt and ended up blowing up the air fryer. From then on, I was strictly forbidden from going near the kitchen. You don't even know how to cook. Little Philip found it hard to believe. He couldn't comprehend how an adult could lack such a basic survival skill, but my matter-of-fact expression suddenly made him remember something, and his face darkened with displeasure. It was painfully obvious that the one who despoiled me into becoming utterly helpless in domestic matters was none other than himself. And this was far from the only thing that would drive him to despair. Everything in the house came in pairs or sets, and the walls were covered with photos of Philip and me together. He stared blankly at the toothbrush on the bathroom counter, unable to believe his aesthetic standards would ever allow him to use sky blue toiletries. Seeing him look so utterly bewildered, I didn't have the heart to tell him the truth. The sky blue set was mine, the baby pink one was actually his. He muttered to himself, impossible, how could I ever marry a woman like her? I couldn't help finding it amusing. If he knew it was him, who had begged on his knees for me to marry him, wouldn't that make him even more distraught? But I kept that thought to myself. 17-year-old Philip seemed to lack the composure I remembered from our first meeting, replaced instead by a touch of irritability. 6. After finishing our meal, I planned to take him for a haircut. I noticed yesterday that his clothes didn't fit properly. They seemed a size too small for his frame. The overly long bangs covering his eyes gave him an air of listless despondency. No need to ask, it must have been those bastards from the Philip family behind this. Ever since Philip's mother passed away, his father has shown nothing but utter loathing for his son. Even those around him followed suit, eager to trample him deep into the mud. They bullied him, tormented him, and crushed him at every turn. The pain of the past twisted his heart, leaving vengeance as his sole obsession. Thinking of all the suffering he endured before meeting me brought a sting to my nose. The system murmured, you don't understand, this is the trendy micro-fringe layered cut all the young people love. I studied him carefully. Micro-fringe layered, cut more like a literal pot lid. I'll protect my husband's good looks. Arrived at the styling studio. 10 stylists stood in 2 neat rows at the entrance to greet us. My personal hairstylist Kevin greeted me warmly. Miss Natalie, what look would you like today? It's not for me, it's for him. I forcefully pushed little Philip into the wheelchair seat, snapped my fingers. Give him the most fashionable hairstyle right now, make it as handsome as possible. Kevin gave an okay sign, but before he could even touch little Philip's hair, the boy ruthlessly shoved him away. He was coaxed out by me, now glaring at me with anger. I wanted to cut my hair. I coldly pried his hand away and declared heartlessly, you have to, do you want to live like a savage? Natalie, he gritted his teeth, eyes nearly spitting fire, don't think just because you're my OL. Realizing the probing gazes around them, he swallowed the word that nearly escaped his lips and muttered darkly, anyway, I don't need you meddling. Why are rebellious phase kids so damn difficult? I was so furious that I gave him a soft but resounding slap across the face, the sharp sound echoing through the modest space. He froze. 17, the age when pride matters most. He clearly hadn't expected me to hit him. Just as he was about to explode in anger the next moment, I clumsily yet gently brushed aside his overly long bangs and softly blew on his slightly flushed left cheek. As his eyes lifted, I whispered to him, like coaxing a child, but your eyes are so beautiful, shining like stars in the sky. If they're hidden, I can't see them. I want to keep looking at you forever. A slap followed by candy. This was my standard tactic when dealing with Philip. I think the same applies to him at 17. The system silently gave a thumbs up. Training a dog, are we? Me hush, I have my own rhythm. Sure enough, little Philip's anger hadn't even fully erupted before I effortlessly blew it out like a candle. Everyone avoided eye contact, keeping their thoughts to themselves. Watching his handsome face darken, then flush, then darken again, he finally sat down heavily with palm prints still visible on his cheeks, muttering in a low voice, then, as you wish. I rewarded him by gently patting his head. He stubbornly refused to look at me. Yet the mirror clearly reflected his fluttering lashes, trembling, his clenched hands suddenly loosening. My heart softened. 7. With the haircut experience under our belts, taking him shopping became much easier. I handled the buying while he served as my bag-carrying assistant. Soon his body was covered with shopping bags of all sizes, making him look like a walking Christmas tree from afar. Halfway through the shopping trip, he went on strike. Why should I carry all this? I quit. Watching him stubbornly stand his ground, I suddenly felt the helplessness of dealing with a child. I sighed helplessly and silently took half of the shopping bags. But after just 5 minutes, I winced in pain and let go. My fair palm was left with a deep red mark from the strain, glaringly conspicuous. Just as I was about to grit my teeth and pick them up again, he suddenly strode over and wordlessly snatched all the items from my hands. I can't find the way, you go first. Stubborn but soft-hearted, I didn't expose him, the corners of my lips curling slightly as I lowered my head. After all, children still need to save face. With a new hairstyle and a well-fitted outfit for a fleeting moment, it gave me the illusion that Philip had returned. The salesperson was quick to read the room, noticing my apparent admiration, and chimed in with praise. "You have excellent taste. This is our newly released limited edition piece, and it looks wonderful on your boyfriend." I shook my head to correct her. "Yes, not my boyfriend." The moment the words left my mouth, little Philip's face darkened instantly. The young man couldn't hide his emotions, immediately stiffening his face, his jawline tensing into a sharp angle, radiating low pressure from head to toe. He was secretly fuming when he heard me add "their family." Instantly, the corners of his previously drooping mouth secretly curled upward again. The system notification sounded simultaneously. Villain-S corruption value 80. "You're really something, host. When it comes to training dogs, you've got quite the knack." I'll take that as a compliment. By the time we left the mall, dusk had darkened the sky. The streetlights flickered on one by one as he continued carrying all those shopping bags, now even more heavily laden than when we'd arrived. Perhaps it was too heavy. He unconsciously shook his wrist, but didn't complain another word. The driver was already waiting for us. Just as I bent down to get into the car, a shadow suddenly fell over my head. Before I could react, something warm pressed against my forehead. It was his palm cushioning between the car door frame and my forehead. "Be careful." Warm breath brushed past my ear as I suddenly looked up, plunging into the depths of his profound gaze. Turns out he was afraid I'd bump into the car door. He awkwardly averted his eyes after shielding me, then gruffly scolded, "Idiot, can't you watch where you're going?" I suddenly remembered how Philip had done the same thing years ago, shielding me with his body in the crowded streets, afraid I might be jostled or bump my head. The car was warm and cozy. Watching his deliberately stern profile and the mountain of shopping bags at his feet, I couldn't help but smile. Such a prickly yet soft-hearted child. After returning, little Philip and I spent several peaceful days together. He still wore that sour expression every day, as if someone owed him $8 million. I gradually got used to it. Sour face or not, once he has gone, I'll give Philip a good thrashing. The young one's misdeeds shall be repaid by the elder. Let us see him put on airs then. Until one midnight, when I was suddenly awakened by the system. Its voice was urgent. "The villain-S corruption value has risen. His emotions are extremely unstable right now, showing severe self-destructive tendencies. Go check on him quickly." Startled, I hurriedly got up, only then noticing the raging storm outside. Suddenly I remembered, because Philip was often abused and beaten by his father as a child, thunderstorms would always wake him from nightmares. Later he grew accustomed to sleeping while holding me, gradually overcoming his fear. Little Philip's door wasn't properly closed. My eyes fell upon a large lump on the bed, seemingly tightly wrapped in thick blankets, its contours appearing somewhat shrunken. I softened my footsteps, afraid of startling whoever was inside, and called out gently, "Philip." No response, yet I could faintly sense that whoever lay within might be enduring unspeakable suffering. I walked over and gently patted the tightly closed clamshell, speaking in the softest voice. "Philip, open the blanket." Remembering all those times he was tormented by nightmares, my heart melted completely. I added a bit more insistence to my tone, laced with comfort. "Philip, it's me, don't be afraid." After what felt like an eternity, so long that I began doubting whether my voice had even reached him, the blanket bundle finally stirred slightly, followed by the emergence of a tousled head. I lifted my gaze to meet a pair of bloodshot eyes. His muscles were taut, lips slightly pale, those ink-black eyes fixed heavily upon me. "What are you doing here?" Knowing the child prized his dignity, I pretended to be frightened myself, pitifully clutching at the hem of his clothes. "It's thundering. I'm a little scared. Can I stay with you?" He looked at me, quietly waiting until I finished speaking before exhaling a long, heavy breath. "You don't have to do this." His voice was slightly hoarse, shrouded in a mist-like quality in the darkness, carrying a certain suppressed coldness. "I'm not him. Don't treat me the way you treat him. I don't need your lousy kindness." Unfortunately, a bolt of lightning suddenly flashed outside the window. The violent sound seemed to explode right beside us. Little Philip trembled all over. His breathing became rapid, and he quickly buried his head in my arms. I sighed and tightened my arms around him. My palm patted his back gently until his trembling stopped. Still just a child. The Philip in my memory had always been the very definition of maturity and composure. He loves me, pampers me, and with him by my side, I can forever hide within his strong, protective embrace. But 17-year-old Philip is different. Battered and bruised, he struggles to survive under the torment of the Phillips family, which has shaped him into this stubborn and reclusive person. The system says he is born wicked, but I know he is not. No one is born to be a villain. He is cold because his sincerity was once trampled upon without mercy. He is irritable and quick-tempered because those around him are like wolves and tigers with ill intentions, forcing him to be wary of everyone. He is stubborn because the only person he can rely on is himself. You must have suffered so much all these years. By the faint moonlight, I could see the pain etched across his face. His eyes were misty, the growing pains of 17 belated years. A dense prickling ache welled up from the depths of my heart. I lowered my head and suddenly spoke. "Will a kiss make it better?" Little Philip froze before he could react. I leaned in and planted a loud, smacking kiss on his cheek. Then I cupped his face in my hands and said earnestly, "Don't trap yourself in a cage of pain. You're no longer that abused child. Didn't you see your future self has a wonderful life?" I gripped his hand, tightly looking at him earnestly. "You're the most important person in my life. Whether you're 17 or 27, I'll always love you." So don't cry anymore. If you keep crying it'll break my heart. To my surprise, he froze for a moment, and didn't he angrily tell me to leave like before? Instead, he silently pulled the blanket over his face, revealing only his damp, downcast eyes, and softly muttered from under the covers, "Not crying." The system chimed, "Villain-S corruption level 50. A few seconds later, he asked me quietly, "Do you really love me?" "I do, always have. Forever." "Then swear it." In the darkness, we sealed our promise with intertwined fingers. "I will love you forever and ever, not even death can part us." 9.5 a month passed in the blink of an eye. Philip called to say he was coming back soon. My heart swelled with excitement. I could hardly wait to see him the very next second. At that moment, a message suddenly popped up. It was the female lead's wedding invitation. She's getting married. I was somewhat surprised when I opened the digital invitation. I was even more astonished to find that the groom wasn't the male lead. What's going on? Weren't they madly in love back then? She fled. He pursued. Their love was a turbulent mix of passion and resentment. I thought we'd be entangled for a lifetime. Has the male lead chased after his beloved so many times, yet still not succeeded? I didn't hide the news of the female lead's marriage from little Philip. She was the only warmth in little Philip's childhood. She lived next door to Philip's house. Every time Philip's father abused him, she would secretly cross through the small garden between their homes to bring food to little Philip, who was grounded. In the original story, Philip's later descent into darkness was partly because of her. I think the young Philip must have had feelings for her too. After hearing my words, little Philip's face showed a fleeting moment of confusion before he quickly composed himself, staring intently at the invitation. "I'm going," I said, comforting him by gently stroking his hair. Many people in the capital knew Philip, so I arranged for him to be disguised. His appearance now made him look like a completely different person. As I had expected, it was an extraordinarily grand wedding. The pearl-draped canopy of the banquet hall intertwined with cascading white tulle in a shimmering dance. The heroine's favorite peonies and lilies of the valley were artfully stacked into a floral tower exuding a delicate, sweet fragrance. Soon it was time for the ring exchange. Amidst the celebrant's impassioned blessings, the female lead and her groom share a passionate kiss, their eyes brimming with boundless love for each other. I couldn't help but feel emotional. She had once given her whole heart to the male lead. Yet in the end, she married someone else. So this is how the story concludes. Even the most perfectly matched pair might not grow old together after all. Even the male and female leads were no exception. Little Philip beside me watched with rapt attention. His eyes held a seriousness I'd never seen before, and a hint of longing. Seeing this scene, I felt inexplicably uncomfortable. I was about to call out to him, but my lips parted without uttering a word. What could I even say? The 17-year-old him hadn't met me yet in his original world's trajectory. Only the female lead, who once helped him, was the one his gaze followed. If the system hadn't brought him to this world, I might just be a stranger to him. I was lost in thought. Suddenly a shower of rose petals drifted down from above, fluttering slowly to land on the shoulders of every guest. I spread my hands and caught one of them. He abruptly picked up the wine glass from the table, took a sip, then turned sideways with a glimmer in his eyes. "Was it like this when we got married?" When I was taken aback, never expecting him to ask such a question. So he repeated once more, "You and me, was our wedding this grand too?" The candle flames on the dining table swayed gracefully in response. Amidst the clinking of glasses, crystal goblets chimed with crisp sounds while confetti and flower petals danced through the air under the lights, filling the entire space with sweetness and joy. I thought, carefully recalling the scene from our wedding that year, and couldn't help but let a blissful smile surface. "Even grander than this." I said. "At first I wanted a destination wedding, but you disagreed. You said after finally winning me over you wanted the whole world to know just how happy you were. You personally declared your love for me, took me from my father's hand with your own, and slipped the ring onto my finger yourself, no matter how much suffering you'd endured before. You never uttered a word, yet that was the only time you shed tears, because I said I do." The young man pursed his thin lips, then suddenly relaxed his tense spine after hearing my words. Under the lamplight, his eyes shimmered with a peculiar glow, my reflection mirrored in his pupils. He nodded and smiled. "That's good. So someone has been loving me all along. In the future, then, I can rest easy." 11 before I could ask what he meant. "Fire, fire. Help, run for your lives." A terrified scream suddenly shattered the lively, joyous atmosphere of the banquet hall. Before anyone could comprehend the situation, the front hall doors burst open as frantic staff members rushed in. In an instant, a thick cloud of smoke carrying flames came sweeping in. "Fire, fire, everyone run quickly, take the emergency exit now." Little Philip reacted immediately, swiftly wetting a towel left on the dining table to cover my nose and mouth before grabbing my hand to flee outside. My heart pounded violently, and an inexplicable sense of foreboding made me glance back. With just one glance, I saw the female lead in her pristine white wedding dress, her eyes wide with fury. Her nails nearly dug into the floor tiles as she strained forward, her throat emitting broken sobs because her husband lay unconscious on the ground, completely unresponsive. And behind her, unbelievably, stood the male lead, who hadn't appeared in so long. My pupils contracted sharply. What was he doing here? He was like a vine steeped in poison, in no hurry to escape, but instead wrapping his arms tightly around the female lead's waist from behind, a satisfied smile on his face. The smile twisted in the firelight as he dragged the female lead down to hell with him. "If you want to marry me, then let us die together." My breath caught in my throat, disbelief washing over me. "He is insane. He is the one who has truly turned dark." Screams and cries rose and fell in waves. The flickering lights shattered across the floor. Amidst the thick smoke, little Philip grabbed my hand and pulled me forcefully toward the fire exit. Hold my hand tight. Someone bumped into us in panic, and he immediately shielded me behind him using his back to withstand the shoving. Cold sweat trickled down his chiseled features from his temples, yet he never loosened his grip on my hand. I frantically called out to the system, but there was no response whatsoever. Normally, it would constantly urge me to complete tasks, yet now it lay as silent as death. No matter how much I shouted, not a single stir came in reply. The flames dyed the corridor crimson, the acrid smell of smoke, making it hard to keep our eyes open. A chunk of debris suddenly crashed down, nearly hitting us. Terrified, I clutched little Philip's hand and ran desperately forward, not daring to stop for even a moment. Yet for some reason, he suddenly froze, his limbs stiffening, as if controlled by invisible strings. The road ahead was blocked by the crowd. He turned back and gave me a deep look, his voice hoarse as he shouted, "Don't be afraid." A surge of panic rose in my heart. "Philip, what are you doing?" He didn't answer, only asked me another question instead. "You'll definitely come looking for me, right?" What kind of time is this to be saying such things? My voice nearly broke with tears as I clutched his hand tightly. "Of course, no matter where you are, I'll find you. Because you're the reason I came to this world in the first place." No sooner had the words left my mouth than his gaze turned sharp and he suddenly pinned me down, shielding me in his arms. The warm, youthful scent enveloped me, completely pressed against his chest. I could hear his ragged breathing and the frantic pounding of his heart. The next second, the chandelier not far away came crashing down, bringing chunks of ceiling plaster with it as it slammed into the floor. The last thing I saw before losing consciousness was the boy pressing a reverent kiss to my cheek. He said, "I'll wait for you." The notification sound of mission completion rang in her ears. 12. When she opened her eyes again, it was already dawn. A metallic taste filled her throat, and the sting of disinfectant burned her nostrils. Consciousness slowly returned as I struggled to open my eyelids, the glaring incandescent light above casting a hazy glow. "Don't move." A fingertip gently pressed against my forehead, the slightly callous touch sending a shiver through my body. Philip knelt by the bedside, his tie askew around his neck. The usually neatly combed strands of his hair were now damp with sweat, his entire being devoid of its usual meticulous refinement. Still somewhat dizzy, I tentatively asked with a hint of uncertainty, "Honey, you're back." His grip on my hand suddenly tightened, his knuckles turning white from the force. "The doctor said you have a mild concussion, but fortunately, it's just superficial injuries." I wanted to raise my hand to touch his furrowed brows, but he pressed down on my wrist. I had no choice but to resort to my usual tactic, acting spoiled. "Honey, I want some water." His stumbling figure turned to pour water, the glass clinking crisply against a tray. When he turned back, his long lashes were actually glistening with moisture. I panicked a little. After being married for so long, I'd never seen him like this before. "Philip, sweetheart, I was only away on a business trip for half a month and you ended up injured in the hospital." He took a deep breath, struggling to suppress the dark churning emotions within him, his atom as apple bobbing violently. "If he hadn't protected you, so well, I might never have seen you again. Baby, what would I do if something happened to you?" Mentioning that explosion suddenly brought me back to my senses, and I anxiously grabbed his hand, shaking it back and forth. "Where is he?" In such a huge explosion, he shielded me in his arms and must have been injured. "I need to see him." "Which room is he in?" Philip remained silent. Suddenly, I realized something and grew quiet. Before losing consciousness, I distinctly heard the mechanical voice of the system. The answer was on the tip of my tongue, still clinging to a sliver of hope. I asked that question. "Where is he?" Philip gave me a deep look. His cool voice carried a hint of comfort as he raised his hand to wipe away my tears. "Don't cry, he just returned to where he belongs. We'll meet again." 13. I saw the female lead again 3 months later. She had lost all her memories in that great fire. Yet upon waking, she miraculously recognized her disfigured husband at first glance. No one knew how they had survived that inferno. A near-death escape promises future blessings. In my social feed, I saw their wedding photos beneath the snow-capped mountains. "By the gods, I swear before heaven as my witness, henceforth bound as husband and wife till death do us part." That unfinished wedding was ultimately solemnized under the witness of all things. 14. That great fire took only one life. The arsonist, Nicholas, the male lead of this vintage romance novel. The system always said the male lead's pursuit would lead to a crematorium, but I never expected it to be a literal crematorium. Dead beyond any doubt. To be fair, he wasn't exactly a good person, but neither was he truly evil. Investigations revealed that before setting the fire, he had opened all the hotel's emergency exits and placed ample fire extinguishers in conspicuous locations. Thus, before the fire trucks even arrived, the blaze had already been extinguished through collective effort. Rather than intentional arson, it struck me more as a meticulously planned suicide. With a grand death, he bought a lifetime of unforgettable memories. Yet, he would never know the female lead had lost her memory. His existence would gradually be forgotten in the corners of time. 15. An ordinary afternoon. I accidentally found an antique ring under the pillow in the guest bedroom. The moment he saw the ring, Philip raised his eyebrows, slightly a flicker of surprise in his eyes. "This is my mother's keepsake. When she was still alive, she said this was meant for my future wife. I thought I'd lost it long ago, never expected to find it here." After these words, we exchanged a glance and instantly understood. This is what he left behind. For some reason, I feel the urge to cry. So I silently climb into Philip's arms, clutching his neck tightly, and say, with a tearful voice, "Tell me, what if he still gets bullied after going back? Seeing how happy we are now, he must feel terrible when he returns." Philip had just taken a bath, his whole body exuding a faint, fresh fragrance. At first, he remained silent as Adam, as apple bobbing slightly in the quiet. Then his slender fingers slowly reached out, their pads warm as they carefully, ever so gently brushed across my cheeks, wiping away each tear. In a low voice, he murmured, "No. Baby, the reason I never wanted to admit he was me is because I couldn't bear to see your gaze fall on someone else, even if that someone was myself." As he spoke, the arm encircling my waist tightened imperceptibly, as if trying to melt me into his very bones. "I know myself too well. If you've redeemed me once, you can redeem me a second and third time. So I know clearly that once he comes into contact with you, he'll fall hopelessly in love with you. Once he has tasted love, he'll never be willing to let it go easily again. He'll keep waiting for you until he finds you." As soon as the words fell, the arms encircling me tightened even more. Philip kissed away my tears bit by bit, and before I could open my mouth to wail, he firmly sealed my lips. I blinked at him, tears threatening to fall. A ray of sunlight streamed through the window, turning his hair golden. To my surprise, my usually gentle and considerate husband suddenly broke free from my grasp and pushed me away. "Though I didn't find you when I was 17, the moment you appeared at 22, I knew it was you who came looking for me. Thank you for coming into my world." In a daze, the figure of the boy and his present self seemed to overlap before my eyes, finally merging into the real him standing before me. Time keeps turning, yet his devotion to me has never changed. Sunlight gradually fills the entire room, his smile glowing in the play of light and shadow. The story in the book has ended, but our story is just beginning. Every day that follows is another reunion,